From 6:56 p.m. to 4:24 a.m. on August 2nd, 2024, I beat every single chess title. Here's a breakdown of every single one of the games and what chess titles are. This entire video was possible because of this first game in which I played a grandmaster. To achieve the grandmaster title, you need a performance of 2600 in 3 tournaments in addition to achieving 2500 ELO in FIDE rated tournaments. My opponent was Hossein Enamo, who I researched after, has a current rating of 2354 ELO FIDE and peaked at 2531 ELO. What a player. He starts off the game with e4, I go with e5, knight f3, knight c6, and now bishop c4. This is called the gioco piano or the Italian game. I respond with bishop c5, and after c3, this could either be a slow Italian or a loud Italian. So I go with knight f6, and he goes for the loud Italian. Now, white takes up a lot of the center, attacking our pieces, and the best response is to take twice and then inflict a check with the bishop here to get out of the attack and to bring back forward this attack on the king. So knight c3 is played, and now the best move is knight takes e4, but I swapped pieces here and I took the pawn. And this is not good, but it's lesser known, so my opponent was definitely surprised. The way to punish this is to play d5, take the space as white, the knight goes back, and then queen d4, attacking my pawn and my knight here, very dangerous. But my opponent played bishop a3, trying to prevent me from castling here. And I didn't really care about this. I really saw this d5 move on the last turn and was quite scared, so I went with d5 myself, just attacking the bishop, kicking it away. And now I developed this piece to inflict a pin. So my pieces are very dangerous. Now my opponent goes for castles. Castling on this side of the board while my pieces are already like almost attacking this king is quite dangerous. So I pile up the pressure against this already pinned knight with the move queen f6 here. My opponent goes rook b1, attacking my pawn on b7, and this is where I really think I surprised my opponent. You see, I don't have to defend with my rook or play my piece to the edge of the board to defend this pawn. No, I can castle long, defending the pawn with my king. And surprisingly enough, my king is completely safe in this position. Even after queen b3 threatening this pawn, the best move and winning, mind you, is bishop takes f3. Taking this knight, letting queen takes b7 check, my king moves out to the side, and now white just has problems taking back this bishop because the king is completely exposed, and frankly, my king is quite safe here. I even have like some rook b8 things. But I didn't see this because it's quite gutsy, like you're giving a pawn in full on b7. I played b6, a defensive move, and now knight e5 comes in, attacking or just making some pressuring things. But I can just take this knight twice and be happy. And now my opponent plays f3, and I go, oh no. As you can see, it's a blunder, but at the time I didn't think so. I thought 2 of my pieces were attacked, and the answer is quite obvious. Try to solve it. I'll give you 5 seconds. It's just knight d2. I missed a 3-way fork, which is quite obvious now that I think about the game, but I looked at this pawn first, and I just played it instantly. And after check, king back, and rook c1, my 2 pieces are attacked once again. And now I go, oh no. And this is the difference between someone who believes in their position and someone who doesn't. I suggest you believe in your position no matter the position. It will maximize your chances of winning every chess game. Because there's only one move that wins here. Try to pause the video and solve, and it's quite incredible. 2 of my pieces are attacked. There's only one real way to defend both in one move. And that way is to move one of the pieces that's attacked and then attack an undefended piece of the opponent. And if that opponent piece takes my piece, therefore continuing the attack on this and being a piece up, so that if I take the bishop, my knight falls and I'm down a piece, now I have knight e2 check. This fork now works because the bishop is off of this a6 square that was controlling the e2 square where my knight is on. Checking this king, the king would move, and then I would just take this rook, And now both pieces are attacked, but I am up a rook versus a bishop for my opponent. So if you take my knight, I take the bishop, and if you save your bishop, I take the queen here, and I win. So after bishop c8 is very testing, my opponent accepted by taking my knight here, and now I take the bishop, and I'm out of those dangerous waters. And mind you, before that was a gambit that was played, giving a pawn, and then I accumulated 2 pawns later on in the early middle game, and I'm just up 3 pawns now against a grandmaster with 20 seconds more on my clock, which is crazy. And I'm attacking this rook. The rook's double to attack my pawn, and I play such a nice move here. I just blockade everything, making these 2 rooks useless and countering the blow on the queen so that when the queen moves, it's all my game. Minus 4.5, the equivalency of being a full rook up in this position, even though I only have 3 pawns. I bring my pieces into play, rook he8, h3. I didn't like this move, it gives me this square for my queen. So I take the square immediately, and after rook c2, I go rook d6. I'm trying to double my rooks. I had problems here. Like, I thought for a long time, obviously you see a 30-second turn. I was trying to double rooks like this, but I thought it just gave a full piece, because now I can't take back, the queen takes here. But apparently I can just ignore this and go rook e8 and threaten both pieces at the same time. And if queen takes, it's simply checkmate in 2 moves. So I completely missed this. And I tried to say to myself, okay, so let's go like this, but this also gives this. And now this is very losing, because after takes, the bishop takes my rook. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go here, and it's defended, so you cannot take my bishop. But then I completely missed this. It doesn't even matter. So I take the bishop back. I'm down in exchange, but I still have 3 pawns in an exchange. It's so strong. So it's well enough to win. So all I do is progress my pieces here. I trade off rooks. I can, because this pawn will get very, very dangerous. I defend my pawn, I play h5, and then slowly but surely, I just rack my pieces up the board. Check the king a couple times. Now we're on like a time scramble, so it doesn't really matter, but it's -3. I'm winning throughout this. The time scramble does not matter. The king moves out of the way of checks, and now my pawns are just running through the board, and I sacrifice this pawn on c3 so that when queen takes, I have d2, and you cannot stop this pawn with check on the king. My king is surprisingly safe here. And after c3, my opponent did check, gave a rook, and then lost on time. This marked the start of this video idea, because only a few games later, I played an international master and also got quite the game as well. This international master is a 2400 from England and has a live FIDE ELO of 2362. The requirements for international master are as follows. You have to reach 2400 FIDE ELO, and you have to have 3 tournaments with the performance of a 2450. So my opponent goes d4, I go d5, c4 the queen's gambit, and I do a declined queen's gambit with e6. Knight c3, and now I play my favorite pawn structure in chess, the triangle system, with the black pieces against the queen's gambit declined. Knight f3, and now this move marks an opportunity for me to take this pawn. You see, because I played this move c6, I can play what is called the Noteboom variation of the queen's gambit decline. And now I can use this pawn to elevate this pawn and defend this one, which typically in the queen's gambit, when you accept it, that pawn is very vulnerable. Here we can keep it for many turns. So a4 is played, I'm trying to pin this knight here, e3 attacks my pawn, and now I defend it with b5. And now I just remembered that in this game I did mouse slip. So all of my games say this, but here I mouse slip the pawn, it happens. At least I'm a pawn up, I'm not losing any like huge advantage. It's still an equal position, but my opponent has such a lead in development, which is kind of the point of me winning that pawn, is that I have at least a pawn for my lack of development. But it is what it is. Knight f6, castles, castles, queen e2, and now I go bishop b7. So I'm trying to open up this diagonal on the king, which can bring a lot of fruit sometimes. So e4, my opponent just takes that center, a center that normally I would give out if I had a pawn up. I don't, so my opponent is just completely winning right now. But it's okay, we go for the comeback. Knight b d7, developing my pieces. The bishop inflicts a pin. I go with c5, trying to poke at that center, opening up my bishop. Our dream has come true. And now e5 attacking my knight. Induced by this pin on my knight and queen, I take this pawn first. This is completely losing right now. All black has to do is just take and then patiently take back this pawn. But my opponent takes my knight, which lets me take back this knight here after I take and attack this bishop. The bishop moves, and now I take this knight, equalizing the game. I'm a pawn up, but I'm giving an exchange back. So my opponent takes back this pawn. I think if you take here, I can actually just take with equality. So the engine really doesn't like this. So takes now, attacking my bishop and attacking my rook. I'm taking back this pawn, attacking the rook, and now it's like a huge conundrum. Theoretically, I am up 2 pawns, but white has the move. So rook c1 attacking my bishop. A little bit better was rook a3. So that bishop here, rook b3. Yeah. So now I can't really attack the rook as in that rook a3 line, right? The queen is covering everything. So I go back, I have to relinquish my exchange, and my opponent doesn't take my rook. Because my rook is very passive, and this is just a better move, pinning my knight to my queen. I am suffering in this chess game. I play queen e7, getting out of the pin, still giving this rook. Rook takes my knight. Very dubious, I thought, during the game, because I saw no continuation for this tactic. So I just take the rook, and now knight e5 comes in. And suddenly I'm like, what? My opponent is attacking my queen and discovered attack queen g4 to mate me in 2 moves by force. If I take this knight, I lose the game. So I have to find a creative solution to take up this square from the queen and move my queen. So I find queen d4, the only move that takes up this square. My opponent goes knight d7, further attacking my rook, but then, okay, and I can't take because of checkmate in 2 moves, but then I can just move my rook, and that's what I played. I was a bit, struck by this. Rook here attacking my queen. And now I say to myself, you know what? I have a rook for a bishop already. And I have 2 pawns on top of that. I can just sacrifice my queen at this point. So I take the knight, the rook takes my queen, and I take the rook. It's not the best, but it's still very winning for black. Now I have 2 rooks and 2 pawns for the queen. Albeit, my king is a little unsafe, but look at how clutch that rook is, taking up that square that would otherwise be winning for white. Bishop takes e6. I was so surprised, because now I realize I'm losing if I take this bishop. Queen takes e6 check, only move is king h8, and this is a forced checkmate on my king. Very scary stuff. So I have to be very careful and not take, and in fact, what is the weakness in this position? The queen and bishop. So I go with rook e8, pinning the bishop to the queen, and now after bishop takes, the bishop is lost, may as well sacrifice it and weaken my king further. Check, now my king goes on a safari adventure in the Serengeti desert. King e7, h4, getting some room for the king because I think I'm threatening some mate things once my king moves. So now I just get out of danger. I realize that both of my opponent's pieces are on the bank of the board, and if I just get my king to safety, these pieces can really mobilize quickly, and they do. Bishop e3 attacking my rook, rook back to attack the queen moves and takes my pawn, and now I check the king. The queen is off of the square. The king has to go up, and now I just saw this pattern that I remembered from a game I analyzed on this channel. It will be up here, the Ivanchuk versus Topalov game. If you saw that video and remember a particular variation from that game, there was this exact pattern in which 2 bishops and a rook just completely checkmate a king and put it in a mating net. So check here, attacking the king, and now if g3, this is mate, which is the similar pattern to the Ivanchuk game we analyzed earlier, king up to h3, and now I just see mate. So I go check, I want to create g4, and now this was the pattern from the game. This is a pinned pawn. So if I get my rook on this rank to threaten checkmate, the king can do nothing, because the king can only, there's only a pawn push, and the bishop like takes up this square for the king, so nothing can happen. So now I play rook g1, but in reality, like this is completely winning because takes and then rook d2 following this idea. It's mate and whites can only check my king until that is exhausted. But okay, I have a minute on the clock. I go rook g1. I'm threatening checkmate still, and I want to just create f3 so I can just take the bishop for free. So queen d3, and now I just play bishop takes g4 checkmate. I found this mate so pretty and very much worth showing you guys in this second win of the day. And now this is the win that for sure gave me the video idea. Because I beat a grandmaster, I beat an international master, I was like, why don't I do all the titles? And so next game it's very funny that it's in order of the title's strength. I'm paired against an FM. Not the next game, like maybe 25 games later. I think I was literally playing chess for the better part of 7 hours. Some of that was trying to actually find these titles because in my rating pool, it's not obvious. You have to find like an opponent 100 points higher than you. And this is game number 3. I played a FIDE master. The requirements for FIDE master in chess is to achieve 2300 FIDE elo. So I have the white pieces for the first time this video. And I play e4. My opponent goes with the Sicilian defense, knight f3, e6, which can mark the Khan, the Taimanov, etc., etc. So I go with d4, the open Sicilian, and knight c6. Now I trade the knights, which is a variation of the Taimanov, but theoretically knight c3 is objectively better. I go with bishop d3, just quick development. d5, this is one of the things I love about this opening for black, actually. So many pawns in the center, and white doesn't. So d5, I go castles, knight e7, and then knight c3. So just developing my pieces quickly, knight g6, moving a piece twice in the opening. I guess my opponent wanted to avoid knight f6 and the kicking of that knight immediately, so you play the knight twice, and now I go for f4. Like, I am all in to try to beat this FM because I have a title for a video, I have an idea, and the idea is like 40% done if I can make some wins. So check on my king, king h1, and now castles. And now I just go for the spike, f5, attacking this knight. Takes, knight e5 is best, but my opponent played knight e5 directly, which gives me the only good move that really pierces into the opponent's position and grants me an advantage, and that is the move f6. You see here, I'm trying to soften up the king side, the newly castled king in particular. So that's why you play this after black has castled as well. The queen can't take this pawn because my rook is defending it very solidly. However, this is a pawn sacrifice, so after g takes, the only thing I gain from this is the exposed king. It is far worth a pawn. In fact, the engine says, Zach, you're up a pawn in this position in terms of value. So bishop h6, I'm putting the king in a mating net, and I am attacking this rook, but my opponent, common theme, just like me last game, is completely ignoring this threat and says to me, look, if you take this rook, I'll happily take. Your advantage is lesser because you just gave me a greater piece compared to my passive rook, and I won a pawn from you earlier. So I have a bishop and a pawn for your rook, and I have a lot of central pawns, a lot of compensation here. And I didn't take the rook, which is the best move, the best idea. The best move is queen h5. So takes, and now I go queen h5, which is the best move in that position. I'm threatening like to take, king takes, check from my queen, king moves, and then I take this one. So I'm threatening some goodies here. You have to kind of stop my bishop now. And now I go for takes. I couldn't find the tactic. The tactic is very sneaky. Bishop takes here, and it only grants you a minimal advantage. Takes, and now rook takes for threatening mate. But now knight g6, and I couldn't find further than this. And the engine just says, look, advantage is granted after bishop takes, queen takes, and now rook f1, doubling on this file. And contrarily to last game, these bishops are not strong enough to validate some compensation for the black pieces. In fact, my attack and this weakened king is enough to grant an advantage. So I do take up this rook, queen takes, and now black has enough compensation for the material that I got. Crazy. So I go check, knight blocks, and now I go with the rook in. It looks like I have a lot of pieces in the attack, but this pawn structure is so triumphantly good at blocking every single one of my pieces. I just can't pierce into the position. Queen g7, knight e2. I'm trying to get my knight on these very weak dark squares here. So bishop c6, knight f4. I'm trying to escalate the position. Queen takes this pawn. This is a little bit greedy. I go with knight h5. Knight takes was a little bit better because here I can do this. It's a very tactical position. And this is indeed winning for white. After check, and I win back the bishop, and all of these pawns fall off, and the king is so unsafe, it's so winning. +6, the equivalency of a rook and a pawn. But I missed this. I go knight h5, still trying for some nice things. Any stumble by black could be the end of this game. Bishop e7, kicking my queen, rightfully so, and then bishop f8 was even better. King h8, and now I find a 5-move combination that potentially can win the game for me. And I get very nervous. I have 28 seconds on the clock, and I play it immediately. Bishop takes f5. It's a brilliant move because the sacrifice actually works. The best move is to decline the sacrifice because it's nothing forced, and go bishop f8 attacking my queen. But my opponent, having 100 points over me, took the bait. E takes f5. And now I'm completely winning. And here's the tactic. The idea is that I want a knight here so that I can checkmate the king. But there are so many pieces taking up the square, it's almost impossible. Unless I play rook takes e7. A second brilliant move. Sacrificing my rook to take the bishop off of f6. And once the knight accepts the sacrifice, now I have the kiss of death. Knight f6. The knight taking back my rook aids my queen to defend my knight, and now the queen can't do anything here. Also, my bishop that sacrificed against the pawn here on f5 is now blocking its own queen from defending and saving this game with queen takes c2. The black pieces are now useless in the defense of this queen takes h7 checkmate threat. And here my opponent resigned. Because you cannot stop mate unless you're in the mood to sacrifice literally a full queen. And here I won against an FM. Here we go to the next title. So this one happens, and now I'm like, for sure, I am making a video. I have to play a candidates master and a national master to make this video happen. And I wanted the title to be in one day. So I play, and this belief, this idealization backfired completely. Because I ended up playing 35 blitz games and not finding a candidates master. 3 hours from midnight 37, playing that FM, to 3:30 a.m. I didn't find a candidates master, and I was losing hope. Until I got a great idea. You see, I went on chess.com and I said, what if we just target the candidates masters? So I went here on the binoculars and I did playing now. And once you click on this, you can look at like I went on players and I went on all players. And here it just ranks the players who are online and who are playing. So I would just scroll down until I found a candidates master. And every single one of NM, every single time I would see an NM or candidates master, I would challenge to a 3-minute rated blitz game. And I must have done this to like 20 people, 25 people. It's a lot, 25, like, sorry if you're watching this video and you got a challenge from me at 4 a.m. on a Friday night. Must have been looking sus, but I was really trying to get this video through. And so finally, after all of those hours of patiently waiting, a candidates master that is 2600 accepts my challenge. And then what I do next is completely unexpected. I went on to win the first game. And I say first game because right after that game, he rematched me instantly. And we played again. And I beat him again. Like I won like 27 rating points in like 6 minutes. He rematches me again. And I think we played 4 times. I will just pull it up right now. I went win, win, win. And then I lost one. He rematched me. And then I won one. So I 4-1 against a candidate's master who's 2600. This is the best rating of the day. Better than the FM, the IM, and the GM. And this is the best game from those 4 wins. To earn the candidate's master title, all you need to do is cross 2200 FIDE ELO, and FIDE will grant you the title. This is my game against Mr. Lamy, and the best game of the bunch was with the black pieces. So d4, knight f6, c4, e6. So I've been experimenting with this online and maybe OTB one day against this knight f3 line, which refuses the Nimzo Indian, and I could go for a Queen's Indian, or I could go for a Bogo Indian with bishop b4 anyways, but I tried this c5 Benoni, which gets a move order in that particularly makes the white pieces uncomfortable, especially if they're used to bringing out this pawn in a 4 pawns attack against this opening, because now it's not possible, the knight's there. So d5 accepts my Benoni, I take, and then go d6 to prevent a d6 from my opponent, which can be annoying. Knight c3, developing the knight, and now I go for a fianchetto bishop here, razoring through this diagonal, and now e4 by my opponent, taking the space. And his idea with this knight move is that he wants to relocate to c4, bring this bishop in, and then just target my weakness on d6. This is indeed a very weak pawn. I go castles quick and bishop e2. He wants to complete his development as well. And here I had seen lines in which a6 does well, knight a6 does well, b6 does well. I tried b6. I think I would do knight a6 in a real OTB game. So b6, and now my opponent goes a4, knight a6, and I fold my knight back here to c7 to indeed play a6, b5, and get these pawn majorities rolling on the queen side later on in the game. But first, we have to deal with this annoying knight with bishop f4 coming in very, very soon. So I go bishop a6 to try to trade it off immediately. Queen c2, I trade, and now I go a6, preparing this b5 push in like 2 moves. h3 is played. h3 does not do anything here in this position because I don't have a bishop. Usually bishop g4 and takes, you play this move very early. But h3 now, it doesn't really do anything, because my knight will advance like this if I want to get my bishop in. So queen d7, it's a bit of a sore move. Rook b8 is a good first move first to then get this b5 accelerated. But queen d7, doesn't matter, really. I go b5 anyways, and after takes, I'm attacking this bishop. I'm opening up my rook on the file. We have a lot of activity with the black pieces, and more so, look at this knight supporting out here. Very nice. So my opponent does me a favor and takes my rook. After which takes, I develop a rook in 1 turn and gain a file all in 1 turn. Insane turn. While attacking this bishop on tempo. Crazy. So the bishop goes back to d3, and now I go knight h5, attacking the bishop, opening up mine, and I want to kind of make my rook and bishop a team to get this weak b2 pawn, which is the plan and goal of the black pieces. The bishop folds back. I go with b4, attacking this knight. Now, Game Review is really heavily criticizing my moves, but I assure you, like, it's only giving small advantage for the white pieces. As you can see on the left of your screen, the eval bar tells all. The knight moves, and now I go through with my plan. Rook a2, attacking this pawn twice. Rook goes to b1, and I go knight b5, completing my plan here. The reason why b4 is bad is because c4 is the better option in these positions, because you can get both pawns in most of the time. So c4, but I really wanted to kick the knight to get rook a2 in. So now knight b5, I'm trying to get this d4 square for my bishop, so queen b3 kicks my rook, and now rook d1. I go with knight d4 in, takes, and now bishop back to e2. It's a lot of bishop moves, and frankly, black has to formulate some counterplay, so yeah. The best move was knight f6, but I thought, why not just double our pawns and use that to get a rook on this king? I thought it was a good idea. So I go queen e7, takes, and now queen g3, and I'm like, oh, there's check. Check on my king, and I lose this pawn here. It's very tough. But after king h8, I still have a small advantage. Queen takes on d6. And for the longest time, I think I took like 30 seconds. And I'm like, I want to create threats here, but queen f6 just gives this, and queen here threatens this and this, and I like complete tunnel vision that this pawn is just hanging and guarantees a small edge for me, which is tough. So I go queen h4. It's completely winning for white. Bishop e5 is the winning move. Even bishop g3 is quite winning. My opponent takes 30 seconds off his 1 minute left and goes queen f4. A blunder, because now after takes, this is what I saw. Bishop takes. I play this immediately, almost all pre-moves. And I let this pawn down the board, but it's not that strong. Because after d6, bishop d4, and the rook cannot support this pawn any longer. Only the bishop does. And the bishop is only supporting for the time being on d6. While my pawns are storming, particularly this pawn, because I want to keep the defense on my bishop. So king f1, b3, b2, d7 here, and now I catch the mistake in a glimpse. Rook d8, and you can't defend this pawn. d7 was a nifty try to get bishop g5 and then d8 in, and this is the only move that wins and doesn't lose. Bishop e3, rook takes d7, I win this pawn, and now we get into this rook endgame, which is very instructive. So I'm trying to so this rook can't move anywhere because I go b1 queen. I'm trying to so white will try to solve their problems by bringing the king over and winning the pawn as they should. I'm trying to make the white king come over here, takes and trade here, so that we get into a pawn endgame, and my king is on the right side of the board, taking away, feasting on all of white's pawns. So what is my plan here? Get my king to e5 ASAP on the rocks. King d3, king g7. f3, it's still equal if king c3 happens. King c3, and then I would have to give up the pawn here. This is the general thought. But by playing f3, which is with 15 seconds left, my time management in this game was absurdly good. After f3, this lets my king in, and white is just one move slower, and it makes the whole difference. King f6, king e5. I'm not caring about this pawn. You can take it if you wish, and white pretty much has to. But first, white has to prevent my king from just going in and taking all of these pawns. So g3 is played, and now I come up with a really nice resource. h4, overloading this pawn from the defense of the square, and attacking the pawn as well. So you have to take, and now the square is open, and it doesn't really matter giving this pawn because I'll just recuperate all of these pawns anyway. King f4. And now after all of these trades are done, I just take these two pawns, and now I realize I could go fetch these pawns, but if I just shoulder this king and bring this pawn up, there's nothing my opponent can do. I have a minute up on the clock. f5 takes f4. f3, and I almost all pre-move this. I take these pawns, and here my opponent resigns with 11 seconds on the clock to my 1 minute 17. And I signed 4 wins to 1 loss. I think I gained like 35 points in like half an hour of playing blitz, 5 blitz games. Very good ROI, return on investment. And now I had to find, with the same technique, a national master. Thank God this was easier because I could find national masters of lower levels than me on chess.com. So this is the first opponent that actually had rating lower than me. This is my game against national master Papai Dudu from Brazil. The requirements for national master, first of all, national master is the only title in chess that is not recognized by FIDE. It is not a FIDE warranted title. It is only given out by each nation in their national federation in the world. In Brazil, I believe you need to reach 2200 rating in the national rating, and you need to keep it for some time, and then you need to apply for it, and it gets reviewed, and then you get the national master title. So my opponent is quite strong in over-the-board classical chess. I had the white pieces, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it took like 4 tries to beat this guy. Our 2 first games were drawn actually, which is extremely rare for me and for blitz just in general. And then I lost, I was super tilted, and this is game 4. e4, c5. And my opponent played this Najdorf with e6, which takes less space than the e5 Najdorf, which is objectively better. I go bishop e3, bishop e7, and I just go for this I did this in game 2, and he escaped with a draw. It was completely winning for me, maybe like plus 15. And so I just did it again. So I'm rifling my pawns up on this king side, just completely vivacious play. G5, knight back, and now H4. And yes, I do castle. I do worry about my king's safety. But after moves like knight B6, it's already winning for white. If you put this on a deep engine, let's do it right now. The depth 22 is telling me +2 for white. So this is already a winning advantage. 27 depth is +2.00. So H5 is what I play, which is one of the good moves here. H5 was the best move by the deep engine, which I just put on. So H5 threatening this G6, I want to soften up the king side, a theme that we've seen already this video. B4 attacking my knight, I put my knight back to B1. I didn't want to go knight E2 because my bishop doesn't have control here, and yes, this gives the advantage to the black pieces because I lose my best bishop of this defense. So I go knight B1, which is the only best move. I'm just realizing this now. Wow, I'm so proud of myself. Great stuff. Now he stabs at the center with D5, supported by this bishop attacking my pawn on E4. I go with E5, which is a mistake. G6 is such a pog move, is winning apparently, says the engine. Crazy. So E5, and on knight here I solidify with F4. Again, G6, doesn't care about this pawn. This is very engine-like, but I defend and I go with, I'm threatening G6 next. Rook C8 is a mistake because knight C4 is the only move that grants equality. But rook C8 is too slow. G6 is played. Best move by far and +2 advantage. Knight C5, I take here on F7. The best move is H6, which is common to just create a lot of open lines, but I wanted to really pierce here on E6 here. So I took on F7 with check, rook takes, and now bishop H3 attacking this twice. And you saw the eval bar on the left side of your screen. Yes, this was a blunder, and yes, my opponent found the good move. My bishop leaves the C4 square, and knight C4 just infiltrates the position and forks my pieces. And it goes really rocky from here on out. I'm completely losing. So queen F2. The best move here, by the way, was B3, just preventing that to then secure something like bishop H3 or even rook G1. So here I have to move my queen, but I move it to the wrong square because knight E4 brings a piece into the attack, also attacking my queen. Queen E1, and now bishop H4 attacking my queen again. The best move here is to take this pawn. I didn't find that. I played bishop G1, queen G1. Rook FC8, and this is a complete blunder because now my threat from 6 moves ago becomes real. Bishop, knight takes. How did I not take? Bishop takes is a fork. How did I not find that? Wow. So knight takes is still a fork. I'm realizing it's less good because this is winning, which he finds. If I take back, it's mate. Straight up on C2. So I go C3. Still these pieces are hanging. 3 pieces are hanging at once. Knight takes rook, and then like the queen is just gone. Okay, this game is a bit less legit than the last 4, but it's a win is a win. I take the queen, the knight goes back. Black arguably has compensation if I'm not careful. I take the rook here all the way from H3, from Jakarta to Canada. Bishop takes, and now rook takes bishop. This bishop was somehow hanging. It's a mess. This entire game's a mess. B takes C3, still some discoveries, but it's too late. Too little, too late. I just advance my pawns. I sacrifice a ton of pieces. I'm up a queen. And a few moves later, I go queen check, and this is really over because if the rook blocks, I have knight C6, and the rook is completely gone. And so in this position, my opponent resigned at 4:24 a.m. This is now, let me calculate, 9 hours of playing chess, 9 hours and a half of playing chess. I go like this. And I think I keep my eyes closed 15 seconds because I was literally spending all day on this. And there you go. I beat every single open chess title in one single day. I hope you enjoyed the video.